That should work. Now I'm ready. Nobody will ever know. Hey there guys and gals, it's Work here. Welcome back to the bench. Today we're going to cover the obligatory EDC video. This is a video that just about anybody who does this type of YouTube channel has to have, talking about what we carry on our day-to-day lives. Now my EDC video may be a little bit different. I live a normal life. I'm not some tactical mall ninja who gets to run around with 20 mags on him and a full loadout in his truck. I'm just a normal person with a normal job with a normal family. So my EDC is going to be what I usually use in order to make it through my day-to-day life. Now obviously that means that my EDC needs to be in my life but not hinder my life. So I'll explain to you along the way why I chose some of the options that I chose and how those affect my life. So first and foremost, the most important part of an EDC system is the backbone, the belt. Now there are a lot of different types of belts you can get. You can get leather belts, you can get the riggers belts. I personally get my belts from a company called Daltech here in Indiana. This is the Daltech SuperBio belt. It's a synthetic belt that mimics the look and feel of leather, but it doesn't wear as bad as leather does. For any of you that have had a leather belt for any extended period of time, you'll notice that the leather starts to deform and shape. It gets this S-curve as it goes around your body. And what that does is that hinders its ability to hold the weight of your firearm and any additional things that you may have on it. This belt does not do that. I've had this belt for around 2 years now, and as you see, it's still relatively straight. It's also stiffer than a single layer leather belt. It's not quite as stiff as the riggers belts, but in my occupation I can't run around with a nylon riggers belt. I need a belt that's a little bit more professional looking, and these SuperBio belts from Daltech do just that. I'll put a link right around here so that you can get to their website and check out their offerings. They have both black and brown with multiple different belt buckle options to fit pretty much anybody's need and style. Next we'll go over both the most controversial and most fun aspect of an EDC video, and that is the pistol, or what our choice of firearm is, to defend ourselves and our family and our home on a day-to-day basis. I personally have 3 different options for my EDC pistol. My primary EDC pistol is my CZ P07. This is the newer, non-duty version. You may recognize it from my previous video. The reason I chose this particular pistol is it's approximately the size of a Glock 19, which to me is the perfect size carry gun. However, I don't like striker fire triggers. In addition to that, I like to be a little bit different. So I went with the P07 for multiple reasons. Of course, one is the size as already stated, another is the trigger pull. The double action single action for me is a safer and more reliable system for me to carry for my firearm. With small kids in the house, the long trigger pull gives me a little bit more self-confidence. When I'm at home, I always have my pistol on me. However, if anything were to ever happen, the long trigger pull gives me a little bit more confidence without having to go as far as adding a safety. You'll notice I do carry the decocker model. This is because I don't like manual safeties in the odd chance that you may accidentally flip one off and may have not trained to turn it back off. The P07 carries 15 plus 1 rounds. I personally use Winchester PDX rounds, and that 16 rounds gives me a lot of confidence that I've got the firepower that I need to deal with pretty much anything I'm up against. We live in a relatively small town, but violence is not unheard of here. So this gun gives me the firepower that I may need to be able to protect my family, while at the same time not hindering me in my day-to-day life. I typically do not carry additional magazines for this firearm because it has 16 rounds, and additional magazines may get in my way. I can go from riding around in my truck to rolling around wrestling with my boys in under 2 minutes, and I don't have to worry about pulling extra magazines off of my belt so that I don't bonk them in the head or bust their knee on them. Those are the kind of things that I mean when I talk about hindering myself in my day-to-day life. Now my secondary firearm that I use to carry on a normal everyday basis is my CZ Rami. Now if you notice a little bit of a theme going on here, yes, I am a CZ leg humper. I typically carry this pistol on days when I'm dressed lighter, shorts and a t-shirt or something smaller. This pistol carries 10 plus 1 rounds, and it's got a smaller overall dimensions, which makes it a little bit easier to conceal in light clothing. Its fire controls are similar to the P07, and again it has the double action single action trigger that I really like. In addition to just being a great build quality, the recoil impulse in these, because of their weight and the small slide, is similar to pistols much larger than them. So this tiny little pistol is way more controllable than something like a SIG P938. My last carry pistol is a little bit different than these that I have up here right now. It is a Smith & Wesson Shield in 9mm. Now you may think that's a little bit weird, but if CZ made a single stack 9mm, you bet your ass I'd have it. But they don't, so the shield is about my only option for an easily concealable, thin pistol. The single stack dimensions give it a much smaller width, which makes it a lot easier to hide underneath dress shirts. Typically speaking, this particular pistol is held in my stoner leather holster. The reason I use this holster is because it's a tuckable holster, and the metal clip blends into dress wear, so it's much less noticeable than the big plastic clips that I have on these. This is also a deep conceal, so that I can tuck this really low, and I don't have to plume my shirt a lot to hide the grip. Now, in the case of my shield, I do tend to carry an additional magazine in one of these pocket clips. The reason I carry the additional magazine for my shield is because the shield only has 8+1 rounds in this configuration. I typically prefer to have at least 10 rounds. I've got to draw the line somewhere, so 10 is my number for the least amount of rounds that I'm willing to have on myself. So, I carry my 7-round magazine in my pocket so that I always have additional rounds with me. So that's my EDC pistol lineup. So next up is something that we almost all have on us at all times, our keys. My key setup is just like almost everybody else's key setup, but I have a couple of things that I carry with me that may differ. One of the things that I carry with me is I always have a 32 gig USB flash drive with. This is primarily used for transferring data when the need arises. Say I'm at a family member's house and I'd like to get some pictures, I can transfer them to this instead of compressing them and having to send them over email. I also have a copy of my resume on it and a couple other little things. But USB flash memory is really getting cheap in this form, and it's a really good idea to have one of these on you, just in case. You never know when you're going to need to transfer a file. Another thing that I've got on my keychain is this leather lanyard. Now, a lot of people have lanyards on their keys. The reason I have a lanyard is because, as we all know, men's pockets are pretty big, which is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because we can stuff a lot of stuff in them, but it's a curse because sometimes it's hard to get down in there to find the little things in the bottom of your pocket, like keys. So having this lanyard pulled up and out of my pocket allows me quick retrieval of my keys in case I need to get through them fast. When I'm walking up to the door with a baby carrier in one hand and a small kid's hand in my other, I don't have a whole lot of time to be able to reach into my pocket and fiddle for my keys. This lets me just grab my lanyard, pull my keys out, and I'm ready to go. Now, to keep my lanyard up and out of my pocket, I use this. This is just a small clip that I use. I keep it on my belt, and it sits right above my pocket. So when I put my keys in my pocket, I clip them on my clip, and that keeps the lanyard consistently out of my pocket and in the same place. So all I have to do is reach down, open the clip, and pull my keys out. So that's why I keep my keys set up in this configuration. So keeping with the pocket theme, we're going to go ahead and go to knives. Not the Trigun character, but the sharp pointy things used to open stuff. My daily driver knife is the Kershaw Thermite. I really like Kershaw and their assisted opens. Plus, they're nice sturdy knives with decent steel that holds a decent edge. This particular one needs sharpened right now because I use it all the time to open everything. This has been my daily knife now for a couple of months, ever since we lost my blessed scrambler in a horrible pocket accident where the screw popped off and the whole thing popped out from my pocket. Blade never came uncovered, but all the pieces went everywhere, so I can't use it anymore. I like longer blade knives. Where I work, we're not allowed to carry, so this gives me a little bit more added security. The Kershaws open really nice and smooth. They're also relatively easy to put away with one hand. While my daily knife is this big one, for more formal occasions, I go with this, the Kershaw Leek. The Leek is a much smaller, sleeker knife. It's much thinner, but still has the assisted open. You'll notice the blade tapers off to a really fine point. That's the reason that I don't use this thing as a daily knife, because I do way too much prying and poking to rely on this little bitty tip here. You can get away with it a little bit, but I really don't think this is going to put up with a whole lot of abuse, unlike my Thermite. So that's why I use the Thermite as my daily knife, and this is just my more formal attire knife. Moving up slightly into the pocket watch slot, that's where I keep my light. This light is super cheap. It's a $5 light that I got off of a cheap China knockoff site that I'll post somewhere around here. As I've said multiple times on my channel, I've got a family and a normal job. I don't do anything like this for a living. I don't have the in at any manufacturers or shops, so I've got to live on a budget. And my budget does not make space for $125 flashlights. In addition to that, I don't like lights that take weird batteries. I prefer lights that take AAAs or AA's or something I've got sitting around the house so I don't have to stock up on additional batteries, especially expensive ones. This little guy takes a AAA battery and is plenty bright for everything that I need to use it for. It's been really sturdy for me so far. It's even got waterproofing at all the openings in the form of rubber O-rings. It's got a really nice clicky back on it and a relatively sturdy pocket clip. Overall, I really like this thing. I think I paid somewhere around $5 for it at the time, and you really can't beat a $5 flashlight that's worked this well. So one of the most important parts of anybody's EDC nowadays is their communication device, or their phone. A lot of factors go into choosing a phone that we don't even think about when we're actually doing it. The phone that I chose is the Samsung Galaxy S7 Active. Now, a couple of the reasons that I chose the Active. First and foremost is the size. At one point I had an LG G3. It was a pretty big phone. It had a 5.5-inch screen and was a really great phone, but it was just big. I couldn't fit it in my pocket comfortably. It hindered my everyday life. So I switched to a Galaxy S6. I ran my S6 for about a year, and I really liked the size, the features. It was a great phone. However, it had one major problem, and that was my reason for upgrading, and that's the reason that I specifically chose the S7 Active, and that was battery life. The battery life on the S6, I could barely leave work at 5 o'clock and make it through the rest of the day on a single battery. This phone has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. That battery is almost twice the size of the S6. In addition to that, it also has better battery management. So this phone, I get a solid day and a half of battery life, as opposed to 5 or 6 hours with my S6. In addition to battery life, I also chose it because of its ruggedness. As I've said multiple times on my channel, I've got kids, and kids can lead to disaster, especially for electronic devices. This phone is IP68 dust and water resistant. That means that it's water resistant under pressure. You can spray it with a hose, you drop it in a pool, and you're going to be okay. It's not just splashes and a light dousing like the iPhone or the previous Samsungs. In addition, it's got military drop-grade protection, which means that my kids can throw it across the room, bounce it around the floor, and then drop it in a glass of water, and in the end of the day, this phone is going to survive. And that's why I chose this phone for myself. The last EDC that I want to talk about is the lost luxury of watches. Most people nowadays rely on their cell phones or other people to know what time it is. But sometimes it's hard to get to your phone and there's nobody around to ask, but you need to know what time it is. And that's where watches come in super handy. In addition to that, it's really easy to estimate the passage of time, as well as get a rough idea for what time is coming up next. So my primary watch on a day-to-day basis is my Winger Swiss military watch. I love this watch. It's a bare bones watch. There's not a whole lot about it. The only additional thing that it has is the date, and it's just got a regular plastic band that I used to replace the original leather after it broke. This watch has done me really well for about 5 years, and has only required the new band and a new battery. I really like simple watches. You're less likely to get mad if they break or get banged up, but if you buy a simple, well-built watch, it's going to last you a long time. On the other end of the spectrum of a well-built, simple watch is a cheap electronic watch. And that's where this watch comes in, the Martian Notifier. Now this watch comes in at around $35. I'll post a link here. And it looks like a relatively simple watch, but you'll notice the small screen down here. This watch is Bluetooth enabled to be able to receive notifications from your phone. Whether it's a phone call or a text message, it'll scroll information here. Who's calling, what the text message says, what the alarm is. That way, no matter if you have your phone in your pocket on silent, or if it's across the room, you'll be able to see the notification. It's a really good compromise for those of you who want the usability of one of the smartwatches, but don't want to have to pay the outrageous price tags for simple notifications. And that's it for my EDC video. That's the stuff that I carry every day to help me in my day-to-day life, and the specific reasons why I chose some of the items that I did. So what are some of your responses? Write in the comments below to let us know what you think of each one of my EDC items, and post a link if you've got an EDC video that you'd like to share. And until next time, remember, do the research, get informed, and get to work. Oh.